Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Angela Vincent, and I work for the State Department of Ecology. I will be moderating this session. Today's presentation is Right-of-Way Green Stormwater Infrastructure Installations, Lessons Learned by David Jackson. David Jackson is the Program Manager for Community Conservation at the Snohomish Conservation District. He has a background in LID and Green Infrastructure Installation and Management. So folks, please type your questions in the Q&A box during today's presentation. Questions will be answered following the presentation. And with that, I'll hand it over to David.
All right, welcome everyone. So we're going to talk about right-of-way GSI specific to the Parango Watershed and some of the lessons that we learned in 2020 and 2021 while doing these installations. So a quick overview for stormwater and runoff for any of those not familiar. Stormwater runoff is what happens when rainwater or stormwater hits an impervious surface, gathers pollutants, and then runs off to flood and pollute local water bodies. The urban model that we have currently has a significant amount of runoff, while natural models in the watershed have far less runoff and far more infiltration. Green stormwater, or GSI, attempts to model that natural watershed and instead have water infiltrate on site rather than run off to polluted and generating surfaces like roofs and roads. So we performed these projects in the Parango Watershed, which has some specific challenges that we were looking to address. Those included land cover, soils, and topography. As you can see, the watershed is highly urbanized. This urbanization consists primarily of single-family residential zoning and roads, as well as some commercial and green belt installations as well. Additionally, soils in the watershed were, through several test pits, found to be automatically not, or initially not ideal for infiltration, consisting of several clay layers and other restrictive layers. Also, in several cases, they had been compacted through construction use throughout the watershed's history. Additionally, the topography was a challenge, as it's extremely steep in some places and leveled in others. In the areas that were leveled, stormwater did not run off particularly quickly, and instead stayed on site except through the storm watershed, and where it was very steep, the runoff was extremely fast and draining immediately to Puget Sound, causing erosion and pollution. So in 2016, a report was compiled covering the Parango watershed, and it identified five site criteria that defined an optimal site. Those included soil filtration capacity, the topography of the site, the impact of building construction on the site, the hydrological significance of the site, and the area and shape of the site. From these, we determined that roadside or right-of-way gardens would be our best bets to mitigate some of the specific challenges in the watershed. These sites have high soil infiltration capacity because they're often drainage ditches, and they had water moving through them already. The topography was already built into the fact that these were often drainage ditches and they were draining in one direction anyway. They were of high hydrological significance because they were taking up more water and more polluted water, and they had additional sites in proximity, meaning that we could build residential rain gardens off of these right-of-way gardens that we were building. This is a map of right-of-way priorities from that 2016 report. You can see that there's a couple hot spots there in blue. Most of them are focused in the western edge or in very highly residential areas. From this map and in consultation with the city of Edmonds, we identified two sites that we performed construction on in 2020 and the first part of 2021. These two sites were obviously at the very edge of the watershed in those high priority areas, and they were in residential areas. The first one was 81st Avenue, very large site, about 2,500 square feet, compensating for about 205,000 square feet, and bringing it, gathering a little bit less than 630,000 cubic feet per year, mitigating about 97% of 50-year storms. That number was tested in December of 2020, in December of 2020, when we had those massive flood events happening throughout the watershed. You can see that this is consisted of, this complex consists of a series of right-of-way installations, as well as private gardens going into people's yards. The 83rd Avenue installation was significantly smaller, about 1,000 square feet, compensating for about almost 92,000 square feet and gathering about 280,000 cubic feet per year, or about 34% of 50-year storm events. So still a significant gathering, but not as large as the 81st. This one was a little bit smaller. This was a single garden, but it was crossing over from the right-of-way into the homeowners, out of the right-of-way into the homeowner's property. This was a complicated garden because of that crossover. From these installations, we had several lessons learned, including traffic control, or having to do with traffic control, utilities, and cooperator engagement. Traffic control, we learned that a lot of these right-of-way gardens are automatically biased towards narrow roads, roads that do not have sidewalks or gutters, but are usually small residential roads where the two cars may not be able to easily pass side by side. By doing our construction there, we were taking a narrow road and narrowing the usable area down even further. Additionally, a lot of these areas, because they are residential, are walking paths for the residents, which means that we are not only controlling car traffic, we're controlling pedestrian traffic as well. And in some cases, we're encouraging pedestrian cars to share the same space, which of course requires additional control. We also found out how really essential excavation assistance was. We were fortunate enough to work with the city of Edmonds and have them provide some of our soil haul off, which dramatically shortened our construction time and there lessened the impact that we had on traffic. Here are some images from this construction. These are from both projects, and you can see we are working right up to the edge of the road, and in several cases, we're taking up a significant amount of the road. This is a significant disruption to people's lives, and we want to keep it as fast and as minimal as possible. Additionally, we had some lessons learned around utilities. Of course, all right-of-ways have utilities. That's part of the purpose of a right-of-way. The main things that we were focused on is depth and conflict. Are they deep enough that our excavation won't interfere with them and vice versa? And if they are deep enough, do they interfere with our drainage?
As well, but I have no idea how you're making decisions on.
Sorry, I'm not certain if that was directed at me or not, but we'll take questions at the end. So the depth and conflict, we wanted to make sure that they were deep enough that we wouldn't interfere with them in excavation. And if so, we wanted to have a plan for that. We wanted to make sure that they weren't going to interfere with our infiltration. Of course, we always called 811, but after this project, we also identified that on similar right-of-way projects and all of our projects going forward, we're also going to do ground penetrating radar locates. And I strongly recommend that as a best practice. Here are some images from our plans with the utility conflicts included. You can see in a couple of these that we're working directly over some serious utilities that could affect the entire block if they were damaged, if not more. And in several cases, we determined that we needed to hand excavate over the top of them in order to preserve those utilities, which is definitely the right move, but it's much slower. And it's something that you need to have as part of your planning process when you're scheduling this. Additionally, we learned some things around cooperator engagement. The first one shouldn't really be a surprise, but a lot of people do see the right-of-way as their front yard. And in some cases, they are a little bit hesitant to include or to admit or allow any sort of installation in what they believe to be their front yard, regardless of whether or not the city actually does own it, which of course could cause some conflict. We addressed this with a lot of clear communication about what the right-of-way was, what it was going to be doing, and what we were going to be doing there. Unfortunately, the major misstep that we did is in some cases we took silence as an answer. We took people not responding to some of these attempts at communication as, okay, we've answered their question, they don't have any objections. They did have some objections, but they didn't raise them until after the installation was finished, which of course is not the ideal time to try to go back and assuage some of these fears. We did eventually get them on side. It took a little bit longer. We had to go back and make some adjustments. We spent a lot of time in people's front yards, 6 feet apart with masks on, of course, having conversations with people, addressing their concerns, and really kind of showing them what they were going to get. One of the major things that, major changes that we made is we started distributing images like these. A lot of our rain garden images are taken in the summer when the plants are beautiful and the rain gardens are dry. And as a result, that image was permeating a lot of people understanding what rain gardens were supposed to look like, and they weren't seeing these images. And when somebody who's not familiar with stormwater or GSI sees an image like this, they think flooding, they think failure. So we had to start distributing images similar to these of our rain gardens in action, saying, no, this is it functioning. You don't need to worry about this. As long as it's draining, 24 to 48 hours, everything is working perfectly. And fortunately, that plus a couple good storm events and people saw the gardens really working, turned a lot of people around, and they've many of them have really come to embrace the gardens and really appreciate the amount of rain that they're taking up. I want to take a second and, of course, just plug city and CD partnerships. We could not have done this without the city of Edmonds. They're a wonderful, wonderful partner on this project. I really believe that cities can and should work closely with their conservation districts. CDs often have a lot of really weird and niche skills. We often have some increased capacity just because we're not a municipality and we aren't doing a lot of the day-to-day things that so many cities are involved in. So we can be kind of a pinch hitter for you on some of these weirder projects. Additionally, cities can deliver sites to us that CDs could otherwise never access. Doing things in the right of way, doing things on municipal or commercial properties really help when cities are the ones leading the way and saying, hey, these are some needs that we have, can we work together? And of course, we both have unique relationships with those residents, and outreach can be done on both sides to provide really comprehensive outreach. I want to say a quick thank you to our partners, Department of Ecology and the EPA. The Veteran Conservation Corps also does all of our installations. If you would like to hear more about them, I could talk with them. I could do an entire hour just on how great they are. Of course, thank you to the City of Edmonds for working with us on this project. I'd be more than happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you, David. We do have some questions here in the chat, which I will share. Jesse is asking, what kind of outreach did Snohomish CD or the city do with the adjacent homeowners? Did you have any homeowners that had encroached in the right-of-way? Did Snohomish CD or the city have to remove private property from the right-of-way?
Good question. So we did our outreach and the city did their outreach. We did it together, but they're often very different. The city has a personal relationship with a lot of these folks. We did kind of our normal blanket outreach where we handed out flyers and said, hey, this is what we're doing. We didn't have anybody who had encroached in the right of way. Oh, sorry, to complete that, it did get to a very personal kind of one-on-one conversation where we were talking with the city, with the homeowner, we were all copied on emails and we were all having the same conversations out there in person at times. So that was kind of the outreach model. We didn't have anybody who encroached in the right of way. The right of way was previously a drainage ditch. And so there wasn't really space for a lot of people to plant in that area and so allow it to function. We did have some rock art that we had to relocate, but we didn't have to remove anything or throw anything out.
Okay, the next question we have here is from John. What level of designs did you acquire? Professional engineers, question mark.
So we had, so first off, hi Cameron. The level of design was professional. We have a professional engineer, Derek Hann, who is normally on these with me, but is not here today, does all of our installations. They were also reviewed by the city engineers and by engineers at the Department of Ecology before installation.
Okay, next question is from Daniel. Who maintains the vegetation in the right-of-way gardens after installation for this project?
So it would normally be the city because it is the right-of-way. Now, we have a special relationship with Edmonds and as part of this grant. When SCD does these installations, we generally cover the maintenance for the first couple of years while the plants are establishing. We do that to ensure that the plants are healthy, and that if there are any changes to the rain garden that need to be made, we can make them. The city also has contracted with us several times to come in and do maintenance around their right-of-way and commercial gardens. So it's a little bit of a strange relationship, but in this case, we will be doing the maintenance for at least the next few years.
And Cameron is asking, so did you even need permission from landowners to do this since it was in the right-of-way?
Hi, Cameron. You know, there's a chance that we didn't, but I wanted to get it. The Conservation District, for those who aren't particularly familiar with conservation districts, we don't have we don't really hold any land. We don't have any sort of like jurisdiction. We can't really force anybody to do anything. We get all of our projects by being very approachable and by people coming and wanting to cooperate with us. That means that even when we're doing something that might not require permission or a contract from somebody, we still want to get their buy-in. We want to make sure that the community is very on board with what we're doing, because that's kind of a best practice for us. And that outreach and that assurance that we're doing something that the community wants us to do is how we get our next project.
So Raylene is asking, who maintains these after installed? If with homeowner, who is maintaining? How do you handle if home is sold and next homeowner doesn't want to maintain?
So that has happened a couple times. When the homeowner is the one who is doing the maintenance, we generally have some resources to help them understand how to do the maintenance best. And we often are working with people who are going to be there for a while, are going to continue to maintain it. Now, we've had that not happen. We've had some people move. We've also done some with rental properties where the owner is not the one who lives there, and the tenant moves out and anyone moves in. These gardens are fairly small, and if they're residential, and they are not often they're not a pain to maintain. If we do notice that one is not being maintained, we will usually just go ahead and pop in and do a little bit of maintenance for them. These gardens after they mature are also pretty self-sufficient. They don't require a lot of weeding in order to function well. So we don't, like I said, after that first couple years where they really get established, we don't feel like we need to go around and handhold them too much.
Okay, and Sarah is asking, who funded these projects?
This was funded by the Department of Ecology with a grant from the EPA.
Allison is stating, I really like the Veterans at Work sign you had in a picture. The VCC is such a great crew. Did you hear any feedback from citizens about working with the veterans crews on these projects?
Yes, we did get one person who they're a snowbird, so they came in at the very start of the project when it was first being installed, and then left for the remainder of the project. But he was actually a Marine in Korea, and our VCC crew lead is a Marine. And one of our crewmates at the time was also a Marine. And so they got along famously, and really a lot of positive feedback. I could do a whole other thing just on the VCC and how wonderful they are at opening doors for some of these projects. If you have questions about the VCC, please contact me. I could talk about them for another 2 hours.
Okay, and our next question is from John, asking about how was overflow handled?
Overflow, so this was part of the larger gray water system. So any water that did not infiltrate on site overflowed to the existing gray water system.
Okay, next question is from Chris. Hi, David. Did you need to get a special permit to work in the right-of-way?
We did as part of our partnership with the city of Edmonds. When we have done these in other places, yes, we have gotten specific right-of-way permits to do these in, for instance, unincorporated Snohomish County.
Okay, we got 2 more questions in here. From Becca. Did the Snohomish CD complete the Ecology grant application, or did City of Edmonds?
This was our grant. We applied for it after back in 2018, I believe, 2018, after the 2016 report was completed. We applied for this grant. The City of Edmonds, I believe, has additional funding, but I'm not going to swear to that because I'm not certain from that report. But this project was entirely handled by Snohomish Conservation District, with partnership for both City of Edmond and City of Lakewood.
So this next question is from Kyler. How does the CD or city ensure homeowners are not using pesticides or fertilizers in the BMPs?
So I'm not going to speak for the city, but I can say that we try to inform people that neither of those are necessary, but we also build our gardens very robustly. And try to retain as much water on site. So if people are using pesticides or fertilizers, ideally it will stay in that rain garden, be bioinfiltrated and remediated on site rather than run off to the waterway. That's one of the benefits of GSI.
Okay, well, I think I have a question that I was going to ask, and we'll see if some other questions come in the meantime. I was curious to know, do HOAs ever get in the way of homeowner rain garden installs?
No, there's actually usually the opposite. Usually, so the way that we do our residential gardens more often is we try to get them in clusters. When they are clustered together in between about 6 to 8, the individual gardens become less expensive to install and they become far more cost effective, as well as far more impactful geographically. So most often when we do engage with HOAs, it's them saying that they would like to be part of a cluster. And in that case, them getting people on board is often more impactful. In some cases, I believe that there may be provisions against having certain types of landscaping in an HOA, but the rain gardens, when they're installed, if you don't know what they are, they just look like nice natural vegetation, 90% of the year that they don't have standing water in them. And you can design them and blend them in such a way that it just looks like another native garden bed. I've installed probably 100 of these before I came onto the city, or before I came into the conservation district. And that was something that we often did, was just kind of make them look like a natural yard care bed.
We have another question here. I'm not quite sure the pronunciation of the name, so I'll just state the question. What type soil is present in the area? Was an underdrain installed in these areas?
So there was a lot of glacial till in the area, which is actually not necessarily bad for installation. Glacial till is good. The problematic soil was that we had clay at multiple levels. So it was difficult to determine if we had actually punched through a restricted layer or not. We had deep clay, we had very shallow clay, we had clay at multiple levels. And the infiltration test, we did a number of infiltration tests in 2018 and 2019, and they were consistently coming back not ideal. So that was the main issue. Underdrains were installed in 2 of the gardens, but again, those the overflow was the rest of the system. So they were mainly just ways in areas that were a little bit smaller to try to retime the water more than control the overflow.
Looks like we have another question here from Kim. Is the Rain Garden Handbook for Western Washington published by Ecology still representative of BMPs for residential rain gardens, or have there been noteworthy changes since it was published?
That is a matter of opinion. So I can give you my opinion, but I don't want to speak comprehensively on whether or not the rain garden handbook is out of date or not. What I will say is that there are some practices, specifically around sizing, that could probably be updated now that we have significantly more information. When I take people through the rain garden manual and how to install their own rain garden, there are areas that suggestions that I give to them around sizing in order to try to expedite the process a little bit. I will also say that it is, again, my opinion, as someone who's been installing these and designing these for a while, that there are plants in the planting section, specifically some of the spreading grasses, that may impede function and are probably best left out of there, as well as some of the trees. All of that is case specific and also subject to interpretation to some degree. So I don't want to make any kind of blanket statement. If you have specific questions about this, or you want to kind of pick brain a little bit more, I would be more than happy to set up a talk between myself and a couple people who have actually been talking about some potential updates to the rain garden manual. We would be more than happy to kind of have a little bit of a confab and talk about specific scenarios as well. My email address, by the way, is on the slide up on screen, and you can contact. I strongly encourage anybody who's interested about this stuff to contact me. I don't know if I will have all the answers, but I would certainly enjoy talking about them. Thanks, Christy.
So it looks like we only have about 3 minutes left. I'll give the chat another 10 seconds or so before wrapping up. Several people saying great presentation.
I want to take a second to thank Cameron Coronado, Christy Cox, and Alistair Schweitzer from City of Linwood, City of Bothell, and King County, respectively. They have been at all of my presentations so far, and I always appreciate my little cheering section.
Okay, with that, I think we'll wrap up then. Thank you very much, David, for your presentation. If anyone has additional questions for David, as he said, his contact information is provided on the slide, and it can also be found in the conference program. Enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. Take care.
Thanks again, everyone.